I'm sure I can come up with thousands and thousands of really horrible stories.
Yeah,
I
I
don't want to relive
don't.
them all. I want to relive the one with the kid who fell asleep in a popsicle and they came in for a chemical burn and I just wiped it off
Exactly.
with a
I
paper
get
towel.
that question a lot, and there's a part of me that wants to kind of respond of, okay, do you realize what I do? Do you realize, or what I did? Do you realize what kind of horrible things I have seen that you can imagine? The stuff you hear about
Hmm.
on the news, the stuff you may have seen on like horror movies, we have seen. Why do you want me bringing that up tonight at a dinner party? Or why do you want me to bring that up at a bar where everybody's having a great time? Like, there's the funny stories that we sometimes have. And I think if
Yeah.
someone were to ask, like, what's the funniest story, that would feel better.
Unstable Vitals is the podcast that takes the pulse of American healthcare, and the prognosis is critical. Doctors Lara and Adam, former ER physicians turned entrepreneurs and business leaders, expose why the system is unraveling before our eyes. But all hope isn't lost. Lara and Adam cut through the noise, spotlighting what's failing, what's actually working, and what it will take to rebuild a system on the verge of collapse. Buckle up. This is the unfiltered, no BS conversation healthcare desperately needs.
It's been a really busy week, but it's a good week. But we've got a lot to talk about today. You know, one of the things that happened this past week is that a friend of mine come to DC, talk with me, and their first question was, "Have you seen The Pit yet?" I mean, and for those that don't know, The Pit is with Noah Wiley, but Noah Wiley, and he was really my inspo for being an ER doc. And I'm kind of dating myself because he was in the original ER, if you remember. But this, do you remember?
Oh, it was my second year of medical student. Second year of med school. It's where I
Well,
learned medicine. Second year of med school, we would all gather on Thursday
okay,
night.
well,
So
not
go
not
on.
to
Yes, I
to
know the pit. I can only
date
watch
you
it this
versus me,
weekend.
but I was not in med school yet. Just saying. I
I'm
I, I know
older.
it's okay.
I win.
It's okay. But here's what's happened. Like, so many people are now coming up to me asking me, "Have you seen The Pit? Have you seen The Pit?" No, I actually haven't seen it yet. And I think you have seen it. But then they immediately jump into some of those questions at like dinner parties where, what's the weirdest thing you've seen, or what's the worst thing that you've seen? And and so we're going to get into some of those. I'm just going to call this like our FAQ for ER, because we certainly get some questions. And then I think, Laura, I don't know about you, but I think sometimes people default to those questions when they should be asking some other questions. And so we're going to hit those. I'm going to ask you, and then you ask me, and we answer some of those questions. But before all of that, you just got back from vacation.
I did. I did. There's something really horrible in the world called school
Oh,
breaks. These are these periods of time when the teachers go home and I assume they just get bombed, and the parents have to resume caring for their children all day long. So my kids just had a 2 week break and we took them out and we said we're cutting out screens and we're detoxing and we're going to the beach. And when I was there, you know, you and I, a few weeks ago, we have an upcoming guest, Melissa
mhm.
Parsons, one of my dear friends, and she had talked about her own weight loss journey, and I was listening to her, and I've been in denial. Like we talked about reverse dysmorphia, and I have that too. Like I think that my clothes don't fit because they
Oh,
shrunk,
okay.
not because I'm bigger. Like I just really, really didn't. And it turns out that I gained 17 pounds since I got married a year and a half ago. So anyway, I did a deep dive down her, this podcast and this no flour, no sugar thing, and I was thinking about it, and then we got home from the holiday, and I saw this photo, and for those of you who are listening, Adam is going to just describe it to you, or
No,
maybe
no.
not,
I,
if he can speak. And for those of you watching, Adam is not, no, he doesn't know what's coming, but here you go. This was my come to Jesus moment. And I'm going to defend myself here by saying that
I did not know that was
I,
coming. I was not expecting, a derriere stripe kind of experience. But Okay.
Can I, in
Okay.
my defense? So, my husband, did he need to take that photo? No. But I have teenagers, and I don't want my kids to think that mom cares more about her butt. In this world of eating disorders and everything else that teenagers are faced with, I've got two girls. I don't want my kids to think mom cares more about what her butt looks like than digging a sandcastle with us on the beach. And my job was the moat, and I'm gonna build you a
Yeah,
fucking moat.
yeah, yeah.
Like, back out, right? Did my husband need to take that photo? No, he did not
I mean,
need
there's
to
a
take that
part of
photo,
me that's
okay?
glad
But when I saw that, I was
I mean,
like,
that has like elevated my mood a little bit today. So at your expense, but thank you.
well, I think we can all say that I am, I don't need to lose 100 pounds, but I think there's easily 30 that could go away and never be seen again. So I'm no flour, no sugar. I'm 6 days in. I have lost 2.5 pounds. And as part of my no sugar, no flour thing, it's not hard, but sometimes you have a sweet tooth. And so the other night I wanted something sweet, and I grabbed, so I had this bag of sugar-free gummy bears that I'd bought. And I didn't eat the whole bag. It's not a big bag, it's a little bag. And I ate a little bit, and then I had a little bit more, and then I went to bed. This is where thank God the kids are back in school now, right? Because 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and my belly was so distended that had I been a cartoon, I would have untied my belly button and then zipped around the room.
Ooh.
I really thought I was going to die. I thought I could go to the hospital and they might put a pin to just deflate me. So then I spent the next hour and a half, like this was no minor exercise. I spent the next hour and a half in the bathroom, like playing on my phone, reading books. Like this was not going to be a short exercise, right? Like I paid the price. So I'm now no flour, no sugar, no sugar.
Yeah. I would avoid that heavily.
Yeah.
So just as an aside, I wish you had called me and said, Adam, what are your thoughts on the sugar-free gummy bear situation? So I will tell.
What do you think of sugar-free gummy bears?
Well, I know what it can be used for and cannot and should not be used for. And as supplemental or replacement gummy bears for pleasure and enjoyment, I would recommend against. And let me tell you why. So
yes, they probably make really nice little cushions in if your table is wobbly at a restaurant,
you could use something to kind of help with the table. But for a replacement factor, I don't know. Let me explain why. So, and it has to do with ER. So I was in my 4th year of medical school, and I was in the process of interviewing for residency. And I grew up in North Carolina. I went to medical school in North Carolina. And so I'm driving from North Carolina and going to the big city of Philadelphia. And so I was in this process like you. I had gained weight throughout medical school, and I'm like, I want to lose some weight. And I had gone on this low sugar, high protein, low carb kind of diet. And I'm heading up for interviews. So thank God I had my interviews at Jefferson in Philly, and right next to or near the hospital is Reading Terminal Market. And so I walk into Reading Terminal. Everybody's like, you got to go there. You got to try the Amish chocolate cake. And I'm like, damn it. I'm trying to lose weight. I can't do that. And then I was going to be driving right home.
That's right.
So you know what? I got 2 pounds of sugar-free gummy bears and some sugar-free Reese's. And I was this was like in 2004. I was so excited.
You should have gone the Amish chocolate. Have you ever seen a fat Amish person?
No, it's
right?
true.
So you should have gone.
But so I get my little Honda Accord, and I'm heading back down I-95. And for those that know, it's about 30-40 minutes between the time you get from Philly to the Delaware line, and I am just tearing into those gummy bears. I have my big gulp Diet Coke, and I'm like num 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 num. And about the time,
this is before the Amazon
this was
website
before
reviews went
an
viral.
acknowledgement.
So you had no warning.
None. And I am like,
you had never seen a sugar-free lollipop that said
no,
beware,
never had seen it. I just knew tastes good, tastes sweet, kind of had the consistency of gummy bears, but oh God, was I in for a situation. So about the time I get to the Delaware Memorial Bridge, my stomach is like, borborygmi sound. That's a medical term for like that sound of farts moving through your belly at a rapid pace and creating distension. And a whole body
fart.
extension, like you feel it in your chest and your belly, and then the gurgle. And then I'm like, woo, I wonder what that was all about. And what did I do? Not putting two and two together, I went right back to my gummy bears, like no. And so then I get to the Baltimore Tunnel, and that's when problems became much more intense. And then the sphincter tightening happened. And it was like, I am going to shit my pants in the middle of this tunnel. What is happening? So like I quickly, once I made it through the tunnel, got out in Baltimore, went to a gas station, porcelain disaster, no code brown, but could have been.
Did you break the toilet?
Did not, but I wish it
Did
had
you
safety
break
straps or something. It was one of those situations. Yes,
something to hold on real tight.
And so then I get back in the car, have my Diet Coke, and be like, I must have eaten something bad. And I go right back to the gummy bears. So I'm visiting a friend in D.C., and like he's staying we're sharing a hotel room. We're medical students, no money, and we're going to go out on the town that night. And he was a big boy, my buddy Todd, and he's like, "Oh, you got some gummy bears? That looks awesome." And so he starts tearing into the gummy bears, and about an hour and a half later, we are now in arguments over who can use the bathroom first. And that's when it dawned on me. It's the fucking gummy bears. It was the gummy bears. And so I went on to Google, which was very basic at the time, and typed in sugar-free gummy bears, and I saw sorbitol was one of the major things. And that's when it hit me. We used that and activated charcoal to clear people's guts out. And Lord, did it do a cleansing. And so from that point on.
Well, I was just going to say, it makes the charcoals sweet. Right? Like you put it in there as a cathartic, right? So any subsequent doses aren't supposed to have sorbitol because even medicine knows that if you're feeding someone charcoal, you should only give them sorbitol in a small amount.
Exactly. Otherwise you kill them. Yes.
They might die.
Not a good sitch. And so like this is my doctor warning to you, my good friend, and also to those who are listening is be very afraid of the sugar-free gummy bears. And if you need it as a replacement to kind of tide you over, be close to porcelain. Be very close until you know what it's going to do to you.
I used to have these sugar-free licorice pieces, and I don't like to waste. Like, I never like to throw things out. I keep literally everything. But after 2 episodes, because like you, it took me 2 episodes to put it together. I had 1 piece, and then I had an unformed stool.
That may be a little bit
impressive
proportion. See, this is ER Docs, folks. This is what we do. And then we'll go back to eating pizza without any concerns or worries or grossness. So, it's just...
Oh, I've been told you have an extraordinarily strong stomach, Dr. Zibners. And I'm like, that's right. Because when you're an ER doc, no trauma patient gets into a trauma without first filling their belly with Taco Bell. Like, that's just a requirement. Just before you hit someone else's car with your car, you're going to eat some refried beans. And then you're going to puke that out. Or if you
have a slip and fall, at a local club at like 2 a.m., there's usually a nice aroma of vomit and Malibu rum that comes in with that person. I can't do that, and I can't do Southern Comfort anymore. But anyway, okay, so here's the deal. What I wanted to talk about this time was this idea around the pit has really kind of energized. I've seen a lot of ER docs, and I've heard so many ER docs saying like they are finally telling our story. They're finally telling like what it's like to be in the ER. So I wanted to take this episode and kind of talk about the pit adjacently, because I've not seen it yet other than the trailer. And as I've mentioned to you, looking at the trailer actually got me a little bit like emotional, because it was very realistic feeling. It was very real. Go ahead.
Does that make you emotional in a good way or a bad way?
That's a great question. I think it's in both ways. And I think the first way that it makes me emotional is like, man, it was really awesome to kind of work in that kind of shared teamwork environment, accomplishing a goal, getting through a shift. On the other side, I could feel moments of anxiety and sadness, and there's a couple of quotes that were said even in the trailer and a couple of outtakes that I saw that just kind of struck me that I've said those things before, or I've seen those things before, and I think it brought it back. So I was going to ask you, Lara, like, why do you think there's a big obsession with Hollywood and the emergency department?
Well, I think it's because we see things in emergency medicine that most people have never even thought of. Like, it's not, people think of the doctor showing up with the black bag and it's all, or you see your doctor in a clean office setting and there's a coffee mug that's not what emergency medicine is, right? It's the playground for doctors with attention deficit disorder, right? But so when I saw that, to your point, my emotions are wistful because of how much I loved it, sad because I miss it so much, proud of myself because we did do those hard things. And so I was going to say, on that note, we see things that most people couldn't imagine, and we just get on with them because we have to take care of the patient and we can't be put off by the ickies. So, like, we know what a code brown is.
Yes.
You are a code brown.
I am all a code brown.
But we know, we know we're the specialty that understands code brown better than any. I mean, in pediatrics, every patient's code brown. I don't know, like that. I don't know about adult code browns. I don't know that I could step up to the plate there.
Oh yes, nursing home patients, severely constipated, or post Narcan for people that are addicted to opioids. Like,
come on, give me your best. Come on, give me your best code brown.
Okay, so there are two. Or
no,
I really have not had an actual real code brown with a oops I shit my pants moment in the ER. I'm close, but and we've talked about that before.
Have you had it outside the ER?
I mean, I think everybody has, right? I think it's good. Yeah, I think everybody has. But anyway, so the two ones that I had, and I'll be short on it. The first one was I had a nursing home patient when I was a nursing assistant. Yes, I was a certified nursing assistant before, when I was 18, 19 years old. And I had to help give a nurse, and I had to give a soap suds enema, high, hot, and hell of a lot. That's what we said in Central North Carolina in the ER. You hang that bottle of fluid really high up, you make it a little bit warm, you add some soap to it, and you do an enema on a patient. And here's the thing. I was standing behind the patient with a fracture pan. And for those that don't know, a fracture pan is a bedpan that's kind of looks like half of a bedpan. And what it really is a perfect shit ramp. Okay, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm holding the fracture pan, and the nurse tells the patient, okay, bear down now. You go ahead, you bear down. And that patient just did a big old grunt, and I swear, it was like, boof, out the butt, all over me, all over it was absolutely,
flash.
Okay, so that was one. The second was, I was an ER attending in Maryland, and one of my favorite nurses, Leslie, and I were working together. She was that nurse that, like, when you see her walk in the door or him walk in the door, but she was the one that you're just face lit up. You both saw each other. You were like two kids that saw each other across the playground and kind of ran to each other and got really excited. And so that was Leslie, and we joked and we goofed off, etc. But it was fun. But that night we had a regular come in with an opioid overdose, and I knew that I had to give him Narcan. And so I told Leslie, that's the reversal for the opioids. And I told Leslie, I was like, give him Narcan, pull up 2 milligrams, but give him like a half or 1. He's still breathing, but I'm afraid he's going to go down. So just go ahead and give him a half milligram to 1 milligram. Give it a little slowly and let him come up a bit, because this guy can get really violent. So I'm seeing another patient in another room, and all of a sudden I hear this blood-curdling screaming from the nurse and an adult male screaming. And I'm like, that's my patient. And I run in, and in room D, he is standing on top of the stretcher, shit down both sides of his legs, a big old cow pile of poop in between his legs. and he is ready to fight. And the nurses run in, the security guards run in, and then he jumps off the stretcher, slips down, poops all over him. Then the security guards try to tackle him. Then the nurses try to tackle him. And everybody is covered in shit like pigs in mud. And I'm like, whoa, this is a code brown.
So for those who don't know what's happened, that's a code brown. For those who don't know what happened, opioids cause constipation.
The reversal.
And the opioid withdrawal is going to cause the opposite. And you took this guy from a happy state of opioid sleepiness to a very aroused, bowel-free
No barriers.
state.
No barriers at all.
No barriers. His anal sphincter
Gone.
lost
And
his
so
mind.
what was kind of bad about it, or there's a lot of things bad about it, but like multiple nurses were in there, security guards, everybody had crap on them. Like, it was a shitty situation. I had to kind of make him go to sleep again, like completely, because he was so violent. And so I talked to Leslie afterwards, like, what in the hell happened? She was like, I gave him 2 milligrams, like all at once, really quick. I was like, ugh. And so anyway, that next morning when the new shift came in, they're like, why is everybody wearing the OR scrubs? And we were like, it was a really shitty night. Don't ask. We had all had stuff on our clothes. And so folks, that was probably my most, the 2 code browns, one as a nursing assistant, one as an ER doc.
Well, I'm going to tell you, I don't know if you know this, Adam, I am a bona fide expert on poo. If you Google the words poop and Zibners, that's Z as in zebra, B as in boy, NERS, there is an article in Men's Health where I am confirmed as an expert in poop, and I'm going to tell you that is the worst code brown story.
Yeah, I can't, like, the association of shit and your name, like those don't really go together.
No, but I'm proud about it because it wasn't about, like, I wasn't rolling in shit. In pediatrics, you have to be able to tell parents what different color poops mean. And you also have to know what medications are going to cause different color poops, right? Like, there's one antibiotic that turns their poop strawberry
or like Pepto-Bismol
red,
that makes it
and
black.
if they eat too many Oreos, right? Or like my own daughter, she really likes when she was little, the blue raspberry flavored Advil for kids. But you have to know that that's going to turn her poop blue and purple. Or else you'd be concerned if you didn't, like, so part of a pediatrician's job is to tell parents, don't let him eat too much this, or if he eats that, please be aware.
Yeah, you have to, right? Otherwise you get the really scary.
So I am an expert in this color of stool. Anyway, so back to your original question. I think in the ER, we get to see, it is a privilege and a curse. We get to see people at the very worst and best of their whole lives, as many doctors do. But we also get to see things that are unexpected, both from our end and often from the patient's end. Like, they didn't know that was going to be the result of putting that in his rectum, right? Like, it was going to get stuck.
Right.
So we get to see things that, things come out of your mouth. You see things, you have stories that are unbelievable. And so the beauty of emergency medicine, why I love it, is you constantly have to be thinking logically, worst case scenario, how do I just manage this? Like, well, I once had a ER call me. I trained at Columbus Children's, now called Nationwide, and it was a big 3-state referral area. So we would take phone calls from, many, many emergency departments. And one guy called me and he said, so I've got a problem. I've got a kid, he's 2, he got into the super glue. Ooh. And he has opened the super glue and poured it down the front of his pants. No. And now he is glued into his clothes. So I had to say, could you hold please while I laugh hysterically for at least a minute?
Sometimes you have to laugh.
And then I got back on and I said, you have to laugh, right? Like, that was one of the funny ones. That wasn't one of the tragic ones. That was, that kid was going to be fine. But of course, you can only imagine what the mom was like. And the kid, and the ER doc, like, everybody's kind of, what are you going to do? I said, I'll call you back. I called poison control. They laughed for a full minute when I was done telling them the story. And then they said, put the kid in a bathtub full of salad oil.
Yes, I was going to say it's an oil product.
And that was the answer, and he was fine. But, you know, right in there, I got a great story. I got a good laugh at work, and I learned something practical.
Well, so speaking of practical, I want to ask you, so this is another one of the FAQs I get oftentimes. So we've talked, just kind of framing this out a bit, we've talked about why Hollywood thinks this is interesting, right? You know, because there's interesting stories, and it really is kind of a microcosm of society as well. You know, the pros and cons of society and what's going.
That's right.
You know, so sometimes there's the ridiculous stuff like we just talked about. Sometimes there's the heroic stuff, and so like it really makes for good drama. But one of the critical team members are nurses in the ER, and you know, in the emergency department, it's a little different sometimes than the rest of the hospital because there really isn't the hierarchy. You know, you can't have hierarchy. And I can tell you one of the best nurses, Diana Mann, that I worked with up here in Northern Virginia. Shout out to her. I called her Dr. Diana in the room a lot of times because if she said it, you better listen. And there were so many cases that we worked together on that she saved my ass and she saved a patient's ass, and her care and compassion was just beyond heroic, quite frankly. But I have one nurse, Diana's one of them, but I have another kind of nurse that helped kind of form my brain around nurses, and I'll get to her. But I want to ask you, who's your nurse? Who is the nurse other than Rob? You can't use your husband, but like who is your favorite ER nurse outside of husband, and what made them most unforgettable?
I'm not gonna pick. I'm gonna say all these nurses, and I go back to like my training because many of the nurses grew me up, right? They saw me as a medical student. The ones I worked with in Columbus, you know, Maureen, Mike, Terry, all those guys. But we were all part of, you're right, we were part of a team, and when you see these extremes of life and these horrible things, you have to find other ways to make each other laugh. So we had these two suture techs. Mm-hmm. We had suture techs, so they would do all of our like minor suturing, actually some complex suturing. You know, parents would be like, I want a plastic surgeon for my baby. And I'm like, I can call the plastic surgery intern, or you can have Dorothy, who's learned to, you know, she's been sewing on peach skins, training suture techs for 50 years.
Yes,
I'd take Dorothy, thanks. Anyway, we had these two suture techs. One of them had a habit, like on the night shift when things are slow, he would put a fake name on the patient board, and then you'd go pick up the patient. And happened to me more than once. You walk in and the room's dark and there's a patient on the bed covered with a sheet, and you'd be like, what is this? And then you turn on the light and he would jump up
I've done
screaming.
that too. That's so fun. I love the pranks. Yes, the pranks.
I had another one who, they said, call Dr. Zibners on line 1, whatever. So I pick it up, and it's another one of our suture techs, but I only realized later when he says, so doctor, I was there yesterday with my son, and you saw him because he was bitten by a raccoon, and you guys said he was fine. Well, now he woke up this morning with dark circles under his eyes, and I'm watching him crawl to the neighbor's trash can. What do I do? And I'm like, and then I realized he's on the phone over at the other end of his desk.
I mean, the ER is a place where a lot of those jokes come out. I'll tell you about my favorite nurse and then tie that back to the jokes. So Velma was my, and when you say the word Velma, you can probably imagine an older nurse with a beehive. She's overweight. She took no shit from anyone, but she was a badass, but she was lovable and likable, and she loved me. And she told me from the very beginning, this is when I was a nursing assistant. She was my preceptor, and then I worked with her as a nurse throughout college. And she's like, boy, I'm going to tell you something right now. And she's from Eastern North Carolina. So she's like, if you are ever...
Crisco's the best.
That's what she's going to say. If butter is better. If you ever treat a nurse bad, I'm going to beat your ass. And she said, and I'm going to tell you something else. If I'm dead, I'm going to haunt your ass. You treat them nurses right, okay, son? And I was like, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And so, but Velma, the thing was...
Because the nurses save you.
Oh, yeah. But here's the thing that she got me in trouble.
Nurses are the one, they're the
She
heroes.
got me in trouble. So I worked the overnight shift as a tech, as a college student in the ER, and Velma would always take me to the cafeteria because she was the night supervisor. And we would get free food, and she and I would eat free food and ice cream and that sort of stuff. But then we'd play some pranks. I took super glue and super glued the nurse's OR shoes all to the floor the next morning. And then I super glued a quarter outside of the administration's office and stood in the corner when they came in at 6:30 in the morning and watched. And it was the most fun to watch that and watch those very uptight suit people walk in and try to dig that quarter off of the floor. No one ever knew it was me except me and Velma. But that was Velma. Sadly, she's... And now everybody else, because I tell everybody. But yeah, I used to have a lot of fun in the nurse. Okay, so next question. What is the weirdest food outside of the gummy bears? What is the weirdest food that someone ever brought to you as a gift? Or, you got an option, what was your go-to meal to try to prevent hangriness?
The answer to your second question is all food.
Anything.
Yes. I had, it was Ohio, and we had the gift shop right outside the back door of the ER, and they had like candy jars. So, like when you're in the ER, particularly, you don't get a protected break, right? It's not like you go on a lunch break, right? So you have food in your pocket all the time. And now I think you're not allowed to do that, right? There's been this sort of health and safety movement that keeps us from just eating pizza while typing
after
notes.
Doing the things that we've done. I mean, it is kind of gross. I mean, let's just be honest. So
it is totally gross, but you also, you don't always get to go to the toilet either. So I feel like, the weirdest food anybody brought me, I don't have an answer. I can tell you the weirdest food the weirdest ingestions. I mean, pediatrics is all about ingestion, right? Okay. So I walk into this room and it's foreign body. That was the FB.
Yes.
Ingest,
FB on the
right?
on
or
the
ING,
the
right?
EHR.
That was the code on the chief complaint. I go in there and this mom looks at me. I said, "Hi, I'm Dr. Zibners, one of the doctors in the ER today. What can I do for you? I understand she's eaten something she's not supposed to have." The mom goes, "It was bizarre. It was like watching, like I couldn't get up. I watched her do it in slow motion and I was frozen to my seat." I said, "Well, what was it?" She goes, "So we've got these decorative plants and they're covered with these, mini Christmas tree lights. They're all over the decorative plant. And I sat in my chair and the little girl was like 18 months, 2 years old. And she goes, and I watched her go over and just open her mouth and just eat a whole bunch of the light bulbs."
I mean, that is odd. I mean, like, okay. Do you ever, you're a pediatrician.
Right?
Do you ever just think that really 2 and 3 year olds really are just trying to off themselves on a day-by-day basis? Like, if it weren't for the adult human to kind of, they're like a walking just disaster, trying to jump off of things and eat things.
My daughter, it turns out she's got severe ADHD, right? But I didn't know it because I'm a pediatrician and I'm supposed to know how to look for these things. But when it's your own kid, you don't. She was 2 years old. We were at the playground. She's on top of something that I'm like, how did she get up there? At one point, she had to go to the dentist for an intruded tooth covered in blood. But at the same time, she was in a long arm cast from her. Like, somebody should have filed but these had happened in different caretakers' hands, right?
Well,
right. So yes, they are trying to do themselves in. She also put an M&M up her nose.
That's a pretty normal thing.
And there's no way I was going to the ER. It is normal, but I took her to the sink and I just remember it vividly. I was mad at her. I was like, "For fuck's sake, I'm trying to make dinner. Don't put M&Ms in your nose. Like, I got things to do. I can't
get them
to
do a
hospital."
snot rocket, and it usually will dislodge it.
That's exactly. We went to the sink. I plugged the other one and screamed, "Blow!" She still remembers that. Blow! And out flew the M&M.
That's a possibility. The other thing, I don't know if you've ever done this. This is an aside. Is done the mouth to mouth, parent to child, and then blow through the kiss.
The kiss. You don't want parents trying that at home because it has been associated with ruptured eardrums,
Mediastinum, yeah, exactly.
pneumomediastinum,
Just in
pneumothorax.
the
But
ER.
yes, it is a mouth to mouth method. But you don't do it as the
Yeah,
doctor. You have the
exactly,
mom do
exactly.
it while you're
Yep.
supervising. Yeah, and then they usually get a big loogie in their ear, which
Yeah,
is
yeah. Well,
hilarious too.
here's a couple. So food. I wanted to just mention that for me, we had some funny things. We called them homeless Happy Meals. Okay, so it was usually a turkey sandwich, and because like we had people in
Uh-huh.
Philly that were unhoused and they'd come in and they're or non-domiciled as I used to call it, and so they don't have a house. So they'd come in and and the first thing sometimes they'd want is they'd want food. And listen, I was the kind of doc that I was like, listen, it's a turkey
Right,
sandwich. Like if someone's hungry and I can fix it, give them a
right,
damn turkey
right,
sandwich. It's not,
right,
if
right,
that's the big deal,
right.
then we can fix that. That's a great thing to fix. But we
Cross
did call it
turkey.
a homeless Happy Meal, and it always came with like a kind of gross smashed up turkey sandwich, a little mustard and mayonnaise packet, and then they had like usually a fruit cup and a Shasta. And I don't know where Shasta goes except to an
Shasta.
ER. Like I worked in one ER one time that had Diet Coke, and I was over the moon. But most of the time it was Shasta, and so that was one weird food.
We never had Shasta. We had
Oh no, you didn't
popsicles
have a beverage?
but they had to take out. No. We had to take out no for the patients, but we ate them. But we had to remove all the blue popsicles. They weren't allowed in the ER patient fridge because there were too many kids sucking blue popsicles, and then somebody
Cyanotic.
thought they were
Yeah,
cyanotic.
that's funny. So that was the homeless Happy
Right?
Meal. The Sunday ER mimosa was an Ocean Spray orange juice
Oh
and a
god.
Shasta lime. That was the Sunday mimosa. I mean, that was. I mean, of course, there's no alcohol in it, but that's what we used to do. So, okay, I've got more questions. Okay, and we probably got like maybe time for one
All
or
right.
two more. So we talked about nurses, we talked about food, we talked about the
Okay.
shittiest case. What's probably one of the most challenging ER cases and patients that you've had to work with and deal with?
That's a hard one because it's
Right.
pediatrics, right? So you're not just treating a patient, you're treating a family, and sometimes that family has done
Mm,
something that caused whatever you're seeing. And so a huge challenge for me has been to learn how to and to teach younger doctors how to deliver those messages without
mm,
accusing, but without
mm-hmm.
lying, right? Like, ma'am, it's unlikely that your daughter fell and that foreign object just landed there in
Right,
her
right.
rectum,
Yeah, I mean, I had something.
right?
Go
Or,
ahead.
no, I was going to say, or, um, the kind of injuries your child have do not happen by the pattern that you told us
Right.
what had happened, and it is my obligation for both your child's safety and your safety to bring in some other people to ensure that you have all the support and you know
Mm,
basic needs that you need to parent effectively at home, right? But and then you're out of there and you leave it to somebody else. But I would say those are the ones that are, especially when you're just
yeah.
so mad. Even just like somebody who's a chain smoker and they bring their kid in for pneumonia or wheezing, and you're like, oh, for
Yeah,
God's
I know
sake.
it's interesting. This question for me, probably one of the worst cases that there's a couple that really kind of are seared into my mind, and one of them was a child abuse case, and one that only because I took off the shirt of the child did I recognize it, and my immediate reaction was, okay, this kid is with me now. Ain't nobody else coming near this kid. It was one of those kind of reactions. I remember it vividly as if it were yesterday, and it was probably almost 18 years ago. But I bring this up because I get asked this question a lot, and I don't like it. I don't like what's the worst patient that you've ever seen. I don't mind if someone says, what's a challenging
Right.
situation, but when you ask an ER doc like that, you have the potential of unearthing a very painful, difficult time. That's like asking someone,
Oh, you're
Yeah,
unearthing
that's like asking someone, tell me
you're
about your
unearthing
personal
one
trauma.
for me right
Yeah.
now that right, but you're reminding me, and I won't give the whole story, but what just flashed into my mind as you said that, because we have so many stories, and you push them, you stick them where they need to go, so you can get up and do your job. I was in a trauma, and we rolled the patient, and the surgical resident was doing how many times you run
Yep,
down
you
the
have to check to
spine
make
in the
sure
back
there's no
when you roll the patient
step
to
off,
check for a step
or a
off.
break.
A step off meaning a space
Hmm.
between vertebra, and I'll never forget the look on the resident's face when we never find a
I
step
have
off,
once, not
and he
good.
found a very, very,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
big one. It was a massive one. It was a fatal injury. It was a car accident, and it was a child. And the look on his face, you normally just go, no step off, no step off, blah, 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 right? It's a
Hmm.
formality. And in this moment, like, so exactly to your point, like, I'm sure I can come up with thousands and thousands of really horrible stories.
Yeah,
I
I
don't want to
don't.
relive them all. I want to relive the one with the kid who fell asleep in a popsicle and they came in for a chemical burn, and I just wiped it off
Exactly.
with a
I
paper
get
towel.
that question a lot, and there's a part of me that wants to kind of respond of, okay, do you realize what I do? Do you realize, or what I did? Do you realize what kind of horrible things I have seen that you can imagine? The stuff you hear about
Mm-hmm.
on the news, the stuff you may have seen on like horror movies, we have seen. Why do you want me bringing that up tonight at a dinner party? Or why do you want me to bring that up at a bar where everybody's having a great time? Like, there's the funny stories that we sometimes have. And I think if
Yeah.
someone were to ask, like, what's the funniest story, that would feel better. But just, I encourage people when they think about if you're asking an ER doc or an ER nurse or an ERPA or an ER nurse practitioner or tech, and you're like, or an EMT, and you say to them, what's the worst thing
or
you've
the
seen?
or the
Or the
desk
desk
clerk,
clerk,
that even everybody in that department has to, like, they're all part of this. They witness the person running through the front door with
ever. Yeah,
whatever in
exactly.
their hands.
It's that shared trauma. And you said something just a second ago that I think is so important. It's like we suppress it and we put it behind us. There was a time, Laura, where people would ask me, what are some of the weirdest or most difficult cases? And I could not think of them. And the reason why is because I think they were traumatic in such a way that I
Yeah.
suppressed a lot of it, and it just became a blur. And it's really only it's only
Exactly
a
right.
year later that I've kind of, it's been some time since I've worked in the ER, where I've been able now to start reflecting on that. I worked on the ER since I was 18 years old. So, and now I'm 28. And so that's 10 years. Okay, that's a lie. I've been working in the ER for almost 30 years, plus
Plus
a
a little
little
bit,
bit.
just maybe just plus or minus. There's a
But yeah, I
margin of
mean,
error
folks
there.
shouldn't be asking ER docs, like, what's your worst shift? What's the worst thing you've ever seen? Because we're talking about humans working with humans. And so, like, if there's something that I can tell people to do, it's like, ask an ER doctor, like, what is something that made you happy when you went to work? What's one of the most exciting things that you've ever done in the ER? Kind of reposition it in such a way that doesn't minimize our own kind of trauma of being like involved in pretty awful type of situations. So, well,
I think that that's
yeah.
impactful.
So I go.
Yeah, but I think it's important. But to go back to the very beginning of this, the shows like The Pit, you know, they people love them because they are very real. And this, people are talking, ER docs are talking about The Pit because it's one of the most realistic we've seen. ER was cutting edge because of how real it was. And I hope that people understand that that's not for dramatic effect. Like, these episodes are resonating true to a point where it's bringing up memories. It's not
No,
made up.
it's not.
It's not just Hollywood, and that's why they're so effective, because they're real, but in a fictionalized setting where we can love characters and see relationships and root for people, and the writers have control over what the ending is, which is something in a real emergency department we don't have control.
No, and
over
sometimes
that
we
ending.
leave
We don't
and
know
we
how it's going to end. We can't just say
Yeah,
patient
and
alive.
sometimes we leave and
Yeah.
we're turning them over to a colleague and we don't really know the outcomes. I mean, there have been times I've had.
How many times did you Well, how many times did you go home and stay up for 2 hours and call back in and
so
say
many
what happened?
times, so many times, or call back 24 hours later and knowing that the patient's getting admitted, say like, is Miss XYZ doing okay? You know, what's happening? What did you find? We weren't able to find something, but something was wrong. You know, so okay, here's my last question to you. So we've seen Hollywood, right? You know, show ER and The Pit and The Resident and all these different things. But if we were to come up with a book, like a new ER-based book, what would be a good title? And Unstable Vitals doesn't count, even though it's an amazing title. What would you call it if it were your memoir about your time in the ER?
I'd have to call it something like, well, so those of you who don't know, I wrote a book years ago called If Your Kid Eats This Book, Everything Will Still Be Okay. So it's going to be, for me, something along the lines of, sir, is that a flashlight in your rectum? Or, hey, everyone, I found the remote control.
That's a great one. Or is that my phone ringing in my belly? You know, that's another one. So.
Oh, I thought I lost that.
Oh, how did that happen? I fell and sat. Yeah, that has. I've seen that. I really like Unstable Vitals. I do like Code Brown, obviously, because my last name Brown, but the ER can be pretty shitty, and the system is pretty tough. And I think if we were to look back at, like, there's so much opportunity there to make the system work better. Whether that's like with ensuring that we have enough nurses taking care of patients, reducing the operational kind of administrative burden on doctors with documentation. And so what I think is kind of cool is we're talking with a lot of those people who have been and will be and continue to be working on making the ER that is unstable and maybe a Code Brown situation, maybe more like a Code Green. I don't know what it was in your hospital, but a Code Green was like all clear, everything's fine. But that's where I would love, I would probably start with, like, I like Unstable Vitals as the name of a book or a name of a new TV show, but I also like Code Brown too. So.
I'm with you, and I think I'm going to just add to that. Not only do we want to make the ER better for patients and the people who work there, what we talked about earlier is remembering the trauma on both sides, right? This is the worst day of somebody's life, but there's, human beings having to step up to the plate for that. And so I want everyone who is outside of it and viewing healthcare as a, for-profit business to remember the humans.
Exactly. Well, that was our episode.
Stabilizing the patient.
Yes. Well, sometimes we have to be stabilized as well. Correct. And sometimes dredging up those questions can be tough, but that's why we want to do this, because we're getting more questions about, what is it like working in the ER? What was your experience? Another one is like, well, have you stepped away? Well, why have you stepped away? Well, what happened? I mean, you'd never ask someone who was in Afghanistan on tour when they came back, be like, why did you leave the army? You would never do that, but yet they do that, the doctors, when they change careers or step back, but that's another conversation for another day. But we wanted to talk about, like, what are some of the frequently things asked from food? What is your shift like? What are some terrible stories? What's a Code Brown story? And also, another PSA, this is a bonus, be very careful with sugar-free gummy bears. All right? Well, with that, I hope you have a wonderful day.
And also, maybe check who's behind you when you... Well, I was going to say, you also have to be careful who's behind you when you're on your hands and knees building a sandcastle.
Yes, that's true. You need to have editorial rights to any photos that family members have or post. But I appreciate you sharing it with me.
Take on vacation.
Okay. You have a wonderful day, my good friend. And until next time, stay stable.
You too, darling.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Unstable Vitals. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to follow us for more unfiltered conversations on the pulse of healthcare. Connect with us on LinkedIn or visit unstablevitals.com to stay in the loop. And don't forget, real change starts with real talk. See you next time.